data for development, women-led development and just green transitions. Secretary Economic Relations in India's External Affairs Ministry addresses development meeting in Kumarakom, outlines a vision for low-carbon development path that is more sustainable, inclusive and resilient, says the working group is expected to deliver a Green Development Pact. In an exclusive conversation with DD India, co-chair of G20 Development Working Group, Enam Gambhir, says India, as G20 president, aims to come up with a capacity-building network to help developing nations build capacity in using data for development. Says India wants an enabling global environment that can help developing nations fulfill their growth needs amid the climate crisis. It was day 2 of the second Development Working Group meeting in Kerala's Kumarakom, where the focus was on transformative transitions through leveraging data for development, women-led development and just green transitions. At the meeting, India outlined a vision for a low-carbon development path that is more sustainable, inclusive and resilient. DD India correspondent Shyama Mishra reports from Kumarakom.
A day after hosting a side event covering the issues of data for development, lifestyle for environment and transitions that are globally just, the key priority areas for India's G20 presidency, plenary sessions began on day 2 of the second G20 Development Working Group meeting in Kumarakom village of Kerala. The inaugural address was by Secretary Economic Relations in the Ministry of External Affairs, Damu Ravi, who explained that the role of the working group is paramount for materializing a green development vision for the world, as it is expected to result in a Green Development Pact. He emphasized on the urgent need for taking strong measures to support developing countries with the necessary affordable financing, technology transfer and capacity building to accelerate progress on SDGs.
The growth on a low carbon development path and sustainable and inclusive resilience are important, and this requires financial support, technology transfers and capacity building. Collective actions are important here, and commitments from all the countries are equally important. The development working group should guide on this path so that the member countries and their policies are also able to adopt some of the actionable items that comes out of your deliberations.
He also spoke on how the working group envisions women as the key drivers of development efforts. There were discussions on the need for collective efforts to achieve the 2030 agenda with the primary goal of achieving an overall sustainable growth. Delegates also addressed the need for an ecosystem which can promote green transitions that are globally just. The Development Working Group focuses its work on narrowing the development gap and aims to act as the coordinating body and policy resource for sustainable development across G20. With inputs from Shyama Mishra, Bureau Report, DD India.
DD India correspondent in Kumarakom, Shyama Mishra, spoke to the co-chair of the Development Working Group and G20 Joint Secretary Enam Gambhir on how the working group aims to help developing nations in building capacity for using data for development, and how India also aims for an enabling global environment that can fulfill the growth needs of developing nations amid the climate crisis. Take a listen.
It's the second day of the Development Working Group today, and we have the co-chair of India's Development Working Group, Enam Gambhir. Hi ma'am, welcome to DD India. So it's the second day, an actual day of the action. 3 important topics. How has the deliberation, how is it going?
Thank you for this question and for your interest. It has been really very supportive of the countries of G20 for the discussions that we've had so far, especially on issue of data for development, where we are really talking about how the G20 needs to give direction to the capacity building of developing countries. and use that capacity building for better policies on issues like women's health, like just transitions, and to do it in a manner that actually creates a confidence in developing countries in participating some of these discussions, in the global community. So we have an ambitious plan. We want to come up with a capacity building network, and we will be seeking funding for that, and also make it a big sort of network of agencies which will be coming together to do this capacity building. The second, of course, is the women-led development. That is an extremely important priority for us, and it's a very important narrative, because the way we are projecting this is that we are going beyond women empowerment. We are basically talking about the fact that women have to be leaders of not only their development, their issues, but at the same time issues that are important for the global community. And we feel that with that happening, if women will be coming in the leadership, the solutions will be indeed different but better. So I think this is something that is also a very important priority for us, and we have received a lot of support from all the countries for this, so very happy about that. The other issue that we're going to be discussing now is the just green transitions. And this is also, I think, very, very fundamental for developing countries, because the developing countries are indeed going to, embark on this path of a low carbon future. And I think it's very important to say that never before in the history of the world has a country developed, grown, and at the same time decarbonized. That has never happened. I think India might be the first country to do that, because the international enabling environment in the past did not support decarbonization. It supported and in some ways even promoted the way GDP is structured, growth at any cost, and most importantly at the cost of environment. So I think this is something that has to change, but it will not change without the international community coming together and creating an international enabling environment which is indeed adaptive, responsive, and proactive to fulfill the needs of the developing countries. And we must say, it is also very important to say, this is not a favor the developing countries are asking. This is indeed in line with the principle of climate justice. This is in line with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, and we feel the time has come for G20 to deliver on the developing countries agenda, and this is going to be very central.
All right. So you mentioned about women-led development, and you've also mentioned about that the developed countries need to think about the developing countries. Now we are talking about sharing the technology, transfer of the technology, also about the affordable finance to the developing nations. How much are these developed nations on the same page? Are they on the same page with the deliberations that India is taking up?
No, I think it's a very important question. And if you have seen the side events that we've organized in the last, yesterday, and also the Sherpa meeting on green development, where we are very, very bringing the central to these discussions the idea of financing, because I think it's been clear in our discussions that innovation, planning, and all of this is fine, but until you put money on the table, until you give low-cost technologies, nothing is going to happen. And I think we all understand there is reluctance even to fulfill the commitments that the developed countries have taken. We have faced this. We have even faced opposition to important principles like common but differentiated responsibilities in our discussions, and this is not new. This has been happening for some years. But at the same time, I think we are also seeing a momentum coming from the developing countries coming together and saying this needs to happen. I think partly it has been triggered by the challenge that the developing countries around the world are facing in terms of debt issues, liquidity concerns, so people are worried. And I think there is a very strong moment emerging of capturing this, and I think that push will, we hope, push everyone to do more and to do better. Because frankly, it's not that, of course we need grant money for things, and it should be put in those places where nothing else, will be coming in by itself, like resilience and all of that stuff. Yeah. But I think it is also extremely important that we use the grant money and the financing, public financing strategically. And so that the private money feels confident, right? Like, so the cost of capital discussions, why is it that in India cost of capital is 10% while in Germany it's 2%? And I think unless we solve these issues, and a lot of reasons for this is usually outside the control of a country, it is the currency risks and other things. So the international community needs to come together to resolve some of these challenges that we are facing, and I think we are seeing a moment in which we can feel that the developing countries are coming together and pushing it, and we feel this will definitely lead to some solutions.
Lastly, this is the second second development working group meeting. That means we are in the middle of the action. Have things started to mold here now for the next meeting?
Yes, I think we can feel the intensity because we have put the drafts on the table. We can see that countries are very, interested and are very intrigued by the ambition that we have put in. They are participating. Some of them, of course, have concerns which might be, long-standing, like I said, in terms of CBDR, climate, common but differentiated responsibilities. But I think everyone is just, feeling the pull of the ambition that India has put forward. Of course, we would need to achieve consensus on this, especially at a time where we see the world is divided, and I think this is something that India has made very clear, that we will not stop until we achieve consensus. So I think this is something that that we can see the buzz already in the room. So a lot of intensity.
All right, thank you very much, and all the best to you too. So that was Enam Gambhir. She mentioned a lot of issues that are being faced by the entire world and how India is actually steering the wheel for the entire globe to move towards achieving the sustainable development goal. With camera person SP Dubey, this is Shama Mishra for DD India, Kumarkom, Kerala.
Shama Mishra also spoke to Dinah Sang, who is representing Digital Impact Alliance in the Kumarakom meeting on ways to bolster capacity building or training for data for development. Dinah stressed on the need to build consensus around an approach in view of varying perspectives shared at the meeting. She also spoke on the need to be mindful of bridging the digital divide between the developed and the developing world. Take a listen.
An important session on day one, the side event of Development Working Group held here at Kumarkom, Kerala. We have Dinah, she's from Kenya, and she was one of the speakers. Need for capacity building. What were the key points that you put forward in front of the entire delegates, students who were there to attend it?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think one of the key points was just to make sure that the people are factored in mind. So making sure that data for development is practiced in a responsible manner. And that also national cooperation is really strengthened to make sure that we leverage the joint capacities and investments across private sector, national government, local government, and then also with development partners.
Also, there were several other speakers as well. What have you understood from them? How does it go forward? Because G20 is a platform where, it is decided or it is worked on that everyone should come together towards finding a greater solution. So what is your understanding now?
I think what it has really, I've come to appreciate now is just the different voices in the room and the different perspectives from very different sectors. So the private sector perspective, international and civil society perspective, and really the need to build consensus around an approach.
We are talking about capacity building and we are talking about data for development. One key point over here is that the developed nations should help the developing nations for digital or high quality data. How do you see, this transaction going currently, and where do the developing nations stand?
I think there has been a lot of progress around the issue around data for development in developing nations. But I think what is important is to make sure that there is that the progress in the developing nations is also matching or closely behind the developed nations, so that we do not increase that digital divide and the gap.
Lastly, how is India's presidency? How is India's hospitality?
I think India's presidency has been extremely motivating and impressive. I think the level of commitment that we see and the drive and the passion behind the whole digital agenda, the digital public infrastructure, I think has been really impressive, and it really shows what a government can do if there is that political will and really strong championship from all levels of government, but really driven from the top. I think from a hospitality perspective, I've been floored. This is my first visit to India. I think I feel blessed that my first trip was in Kumarakom, because I think it's such a beautiful and peaceful relaxing environment, and I think definitely I plan to come back again.
We do hope you come back soon with all your friends and family. Thank you very much for talking to us. So that was Diana. She also mentioned about her plans to come and visit Kumarkom later, but she also mentioned about the topics that need the attention and how capacity building is going on currently. Camera person SP Dubey, this is Shama Mishra for DD India, Kumarkom, Kerala.
India's Ministry of Rural Development presented its GIS initiatives for planning and auditing various schemes such as rural housing and rural roads at the G20 Development Working Group meeting in Kumarakom in Kerala. A Geographic Information System, or GIS, is a system that creates, manages, analyzes and maps all types of data. The purpose behind these GIS initiatives of the Rural Development Ministry is to promote complete transparency, paperless decision-making and to speed up the process of taking immediate benefits to the people. Take a listen.
The main plenary sessions of the second Development Working Group has already begun, and we are here at one of the stalls, the exhibition stalls of Ministry of Rural Development. And as you can see, they've already portrayed over here, they've already showcased different facilities, different initiative that they have taken through their GIS or through their digital means. The idea is to reach the Antyodaya, the idea is to connect the last mile, and how they can do it, how better they can do it is through the means of digital awareness or digital initiatives. We have Pradeep Agarwal. He is the director of NRIDA, Ministry of Rural Development. Sir, could you explain a little about what all initiatives and events that you've put over here?
We have put in this exhibition as guided to us by our Honorable Minister Shri Giriraj Singh Ji, who is very tech savvy in terms of using the technology for the sustainable development, and our Additional Secretary and Director General Dr. Ashish Kumar Goyal and Secretary Mr. Sailesh Kumar Singh. So they are very particular that how we can use the GIS technology, GIS tagging and the Prime Minister Gati Shakti program, wherein we can use all of the IT tools, and as you can see in this exhibition, we use this IT tool to save to make economy in the infrastructure, so that we saved thousands of crores by applying this GIS technology, and for the maintenance of Pradhan Mantri Gramin Sadak Yojana roads across the country, Pradhan Mantri Gramin Awas Yojana. So all these schemes are being closely monitored through our online system, which is in time, and then even the citizen can participate. Like for example, we have developed this utility called EMAG, where the maintenance of the roads in the rural areas are measured in terms of their performance, not in terms of the repair what has been done, the road how it is performing. We give marks to the road, and then accordingly the payment is made to the contractor who is maintaining, and now the citizen can also access. So through this exhibition, as you can see that in the Prime Minister PMGSY scheme of PMGSY 3, wherein the government has mandated us to make 1,25,000 kilometers of road across the country, and the main challenge is to have the sustainable development, the new technology in the construction, and the selection of road, which is very, very important. So through all these our IT means, we select the road, and sitting at the headquarters, we can scrutinize the DPR to save the money in the construction, sustainable development, environmental protection, and all these schemes we are doing it through the Ministry of Rural Development on the initiative by our Honorable Minister Shri Giriraj Singh Ji and our Additional Secretary, and you can see what all we have put in here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as he has already mentioned that it is about sustainable development, likewise the second Development Working Group is also working towards achieving the sustainable development goal and towards inclusive development. So clearly digital means and digital initiatives are actually working for the Antyodaya, and also to connect people in the rural areas through Gram Sadak Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, and also Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. With camera person SP Dubey, this is Shama Mishra for DD India, Kumarkom, Kerala.
DD India correspondent Shama Mishra also caught up with some delegates on the issues being discussed at the Development Working Group meeting and the hospitality being extended by India to them. Take a listen.
We have to look at development in a holistic lens. We can't think of leaving one and then achieving other. Environmental transformation and green and just transformation also needs huge investment. We are seeing that at the global level, the financial architecture is designed in such a way that more funds are flowing to the mitigation work and less is for adaptation. However, for the developing and least developed countries, adaptation funds are more important.
At the global level, we're facing two very interlinked challenges, the climate crisis, but also the need for development in developing countries. And the development challenge has gotten harder in the last few years with the rise of global energy prices, with the financial turmoil that we're seeing in the world. So I think India's G20 presidency has made a really strong effort to bring together these two issues, the climate crisis and the development crisis.
This day is to really set the stage for the close discussions among G20 members, where things are going to be negotiated and things are going to get harder. There were, I think, two great sections. One was more on data for development and how capacity building initiatives, which the G20 presidency is pushing, can contribute to it. And the second part was more on the nexus between climate or environment and development, which is another main area of this G20 presidency. And the idea here is to facilitate a just green transition so that developing countries have fulfilled their aspirations of industrializing without carbonizing.
So far, I just wanted to thank India for their incredible hospitality in such a beautiful location right here in Kumarakom with a beautiful bay behind us and lake. It's just absolutely stunning. And you know, the choices of topics we discussed this morning on women-led development and data for development, both of which are incredibly important to the UK. And we just had very rich conversations on both subjects, and looking forward to taking that forward with our G20 colleagues here.
Well, I think every country that came to this meeting agrees that India has chosen very important topics for this development working group at the G20. I am particularly impressed about the digital inclusion emphasis that the country has been putting, and that is certainly a new issue for the group, and they are pushing forward that agenda very strongly, and Brazil next year in the presidency of the G20 intends to continue that. Well, we're still assessing how we can, let's say, along the year, and after we come to the final stages of the Indian presidency, what will be the takeaway from which we will start our presidency. So that will still take some time.
We think this is a very good timing to discuss the development agenda. You know, there are many things going on both here at G20 with the sequence of 4 emerging countries, first Indonesia, then India, Brazil, and then South Africa. We think this is a very good momentum to keep the 2030 agenda moving forward, especially considering we are at the halfway point and we are very delayed on it. So we really need to take urgent action to accelerate the achievement of SDGs, and India is doing a very good job on it, and we intend to keep it moving forward next year. This is the first time we joined the Troika, and now we are working very closely together with the Indians. It's been very productive.
Oh, it's wonderful. We are really impressed by how we are received here, and you know, the beauty of this place is really amazing. Now that I've visited Kerala and Kumarakom specifically, I see how diverse Indian nature is, and I'm really impressed. So thank you very much for this.
I think it's going well. The topics are essential. Women-led development is something proposed by the Indian presidency that we, Argentina, think is very important, and I think good things are going to happen. And capacity building, all of them are very important issues that we are trying to work towards fulfilling.
There you heard from the foreign delegates in Kumarakom. Let's shift gears for a while. Speaking to DD India, India's Tourism Secretary Arvind Singh spoke on how, after 2 meetings of the Tourism Working Group, G20 countries are now closing in on a consensus on the 5 priority areas of the Tourism Working Group, and the consensus will be reflected in the ministerial declaration that will be adopted in Goa. Take a listen.
Now we have had 2 meetings of the working group. In the first one, we presented all the 5 priorities that we had laid down, and these were endorsed by all the member countries. And in the second meeting, which was recently held at Siliguri and Darjeeling, the UNWTO presented the results of the survey that they had done on the priorities. There was also a workshop conducted, and also the member countries presented, 5 member countries presented 5 excellent presentations on each of these theme areas of priorities that we had. And the 5 areas are green tourism, digitalization, skilling, strengthening MSMEs, and improving the capacity of destination management organizations. So there were 5 excellent presentations. So there is a consensus on all these priorities, and we are satisfied that we are progressing in the right direction in preparing the Goa declaration that will happen after the ministers meeting. All the tourism ministers meeting happens at Goa, and they will be able to adopt this final communique on the basis of the discussions that we have had.
And with that, we come to the close of this edition of India at G20. Thanks for watching.
Get in-depth analysis of the important news of the day. Spotlight on day's newsmakers. Expert comments to dissect the news. Get the finer points of the matter. Watch Dateline 5 p.m. on weekdays on DD India.
Is Hinduphobia the new challenge for Indian students and professionals abroad?
Karan Kataria was very good, going really well. On before 24th, the moment these messages were rolled out, a smear campaign which alleged me of Islamophobic, homophobic, transphobic, Hindu nationalist, all the complaints suddenly come up.
Once you vie for a position of power and people know that you are proud of your heritage and you are not necessarily hyper leftist, I would say, then immediately there's this attack.
And never be afraid. We have survived not because we were afraid for more than 5,000 years.